stream. This is a Q&A, so get your questions in. I've got a bunch of questions already submitted, so just to give you a little bit of background, I'm friends with Jamil. My name is Dain Miller, former developer at Google, former presidential innovation fellow at the White House. You can find more if you're curious about me, Dain Miller, DainMiller.org. That's kind of my home base. Friends with Jamil. So just a quick, before we get into questions, quick update on the new hackathon. I know everybody's curious about that. The next Fall In Hackathon is November 18th to 20th. The keynote will be by former CIA agent Andrew Bustamante, and I'll be a judge. And the theme is, for all the projects, the theme is how are we going to help homelessness, specifically veteran homelessness. So if you have questions about what you might want to work on during the hackathon, I'm happy to answer that, but just happy to answer any questions in general about, how to get into tech. So let's start with some of the questions that we got here from the audience previously. So I will read these. Let me see if I can get the mic out of the frame here. You served as a PIF in the White House, but never the military. What made you want to join the military? What makes you continue to be motivated to learn, tech, and create? And what got you into coding and the specific technologies that you choose? Yes, this is a good question. So I've always wanted to be somebody that, I always wanted to serve the country. That's actually what attracted me to government work in general. They even, when we joined, they even called it a tour of duty. You actually had to leave. You couldn't stay on for 20 years. You had a tour in the government, assigned to a specific agency, and then you were kind of, pushed out, after your tour was complete. And some people could extend their tours and stuff, of course. But yeah, I just always have been called to serve in some way. And especially because for some reason, I'm one of those weird people that really loves this country. I guess it's just because I've had perspective of, what it's like everywhere else in the world. And so I'm one of those people. I know there's a big trend to not like this country. It's a big trend these days, but I'm just one of those people that's always loved it. So I've always wanted to join the military. Unfortunately, medical stuff, right? So it's been a kind of a bummer. When I was younger, I couldn't do that. So joining the White House was actually a huge opportunity for me. The innovation fellows, it was I'm actually going to be able to help people. It was kind of a bummer in a way, because when we got in there, we weren't helping people to the degree that I thought we were. So that was kind of a bummer, but and then to finish the question, how, what keeps me motivated and pushing forward and stuff? Honestly, it's now I used, I told you, I used to want to serve and help the country, right? And I kind of had a bummer of an experience there, trying to really have an impact, and realize the impact wasn't quite as big as I would hope. And now, if anybody here is trying to become an innovation fellow, don't let me turn you off. There was 16, 17, 18 people out of the 24 people in our batch that went on to have a huge impact. I mean, they created 2 government agencies. I didn't have anything to do with that. So that just goes to show you, if you do play the game correctly, just like in the military, I assume, if you play the game correctly, you have a huge impact. So don't let that turn you off of being applying for the innovation fellowship. It's something that you should definitely apply for if you think and honestly, apply for it, period. That's what I'll tell you. One of the tips that I'll just give you right out the gate, guys, is think of this like an algorithm. Here's the algorithm. Say yes to everything until you can't, and you're forced to say no. That's the algorithm. So the algorithm is, I'm going to apply for every freaking thing I could possibly imagine. That's what I did. I'm going to apply for everything I could possibly imagine, everything I could touch. I was doing interviews at Twitter after 12 months, right? I never wrote a line of code in JavaScript, right? And then 12 months later, I was applying at Twitter as a front-end engineer. Obviously, I was getting declined, right? But the point was, I was applying and applying and applying at every freaking opportunity I could possibly take. And that's what got me the inspiration of being this innovation fellow is saying, I could probably apply to this, right? So that's something everybody needs to learn, okay? You don't need to wait for permission. You don't need to wait to feel oh my God, am I ready? Am I not ready? Do I know enough? All of that is BS. Okay. So there's a question in here about that. That digs into this topic even more. So let's move on to the next question. In your opinion, is it too late to get into coding? Tech Lead from YouTube, for instance, has a huge following and is suggesting it may be too late. You always seem positive. How do you initially react when you hit a major blocker in coding? So those are 2 questions. So is it too late to get into tech? No. like tech lead is one of these guys that is controversial just to get like he's really intelligent, so he uses controversy to garner attention, right? That's what really intelligent people do. In fact, I should be doing that more. In fact, I do that when I teach people to learn a framework instead of a language. So if you've ever been out there and you're like, I want to learn to code as fast as humanly possible, it's the fastest way. Don't learn a language. This is like something I teach, right? Learn a framework. Don't learn Ruby, learn Rails. Don't learn JavaScript, learn React. Don't learn JavaScript, learn Ember. And when you learn the framework, you will implicitly therefore learn the language because you're a smart guy or girl. If you weren't smart, you wouldn't be on this live stream, right? You wouldn't be coming to a hackathon. So it's just the way it is. Like, you will pick up all the little bits and bobs, but you've got to focus on a big actionable thing that you can do. And a framework is exactly that. A framework is, how do I actionably go from 0 to 1? How do I publish something into the world and get other people to see it? That's all a framework is. I don't care if it's Rails or, Vue.js or Ember or Angular or Django, whatever. Like, it's just, how do I get people to see what I've coded? And by the way, it could be an app development framework, not just web development, right? It could be a game development framework. If you want to learn game development, learn Unity. Don't learn C++, because as you learn Unity, you will learn C# or you will learn C++. So this is all like super important, right? This is like how to hack the process and make it quicker, right? So anyway, that's what tech lead does, is he garners this controversy. And so no, it's not too late at all. And then the next question was, how do you react internally when you hit a major blocker? Yeah, this is something that like happens with a lot of people. So we hit a blocker when we go to write like, let's say I assign somebody a tutorial, right? Like, they have to do a tutorial. And when you do the tutorial, you have an error message that pops up in the code. That's like that's like a legit blocker that people are like, oh, dang, what do I do? It's, guys, it's not that complicated. I literally tell people to act like a freaking robot. Copy the error, paste it into Google, click the first link, Stack Overflow, 3 answers. Take the first answer, copy what they say, paste it. Does it fix it? Yes, no, no, next one. Copy, paste. Does it fix it? Yes, no, no, next one. It's like, dude, just like, it's a robot. You're fucking, a robot could do this. In fact, robots are doing this. Robots are writing code. You're infinitely smarter than a robot. Okay. So like, you can have the courage it takes to apply for a job. You can have the courage it takes to actually put yourself out there in a way that's creative. Get a blog going, get a Twitter going, get creative about this. Don't just sit behind your computer like, I'm going to learn C++ like a freaking mindless drone, right? Like, get creative about it. Like, it's just something I'm passionate about, right? Because guys, you could do this 10 times faster than you're doing it. You could have the job 10 times faster than you're getting it. You could get to the next level 10 times faster than you're getting there. Okay. And if you don't believe that, I'm proof, right? I'm not smart. I'm not smarter than you. And I've done that infinitely over and over and over in my career. So that should be proof enough. Next question. And guys, ask questions, please, in the chat. I will happily answer. So, this is a great question. I love this question. Okay. Can you expand on divergent versus convergent thinking and your thoughts on the future of coding in 100 years in 2122? So this is like a super advanced concept. So I love this. So convergent thinking is, so like, we're in the Myers-Briggs personality test, right? I'm an INFP. Like, and by the way, I'm like half I, half E, half P, half J, right? It's just spectrum. You're not 0 or 1. It's a spectrum for each letter. So the last letter, the P or the J, the perceiver or the judger, that is related to your default state of thinking. Are you a convergent thinker or are you a divergent thinker? So this is like absolutely critical in the way you approach the world. And by the way, this isn't like you're not stuck. This is just something you need to be aware of. So you go, when I approach a problem, I'm probably going to default to this state. And then maybe for this specific issue, maybe I need to switch. Okay, so let me give you an example. Let's say like you're going to research a topic like you have no idea about. Okay, and let's say you're a J type in the Myers-Briggs. Well, that means that you actually default to convergent thinking. That means you're an optimizer. Every time you go on a road trip, you're like, what's the fastest way to get there? Every time you go to a carnival or a festival, you're like, what's the fastest way to get through all the rides I want to ride and then come out like as fast as, like, that's a classic J type. I know many people like that. And if you're a T and a J, that's even more like extreme in that area. Now, let's say you're the opposite, a P type in the Myers-Briggs in the last letter, right? You're typically going to be more of the explorer. The algorithm in your brain is not an optimization algorithm, it's an explorer algorithm. You're literally wandering through the world like, can I find more to explore? So this is a completely different type of person. So you have to actually be aware of this and use this in your day-to-day life as you go about coding. Like, I don't know why I have these in. Nobody's talking, or there's no way you can talk. So basically, as you go through this journey, like, let's say you want to research something you've never done before, you've never experimented with it, you actually have to switch to divergent thinking, because your brain has to go out like this, and you have to touch on like 50 different topics and see like, what are all the possibilities out there in the world? And guess what? If you're a J type, you're not going to want to do that. If you're a J type, you're going to want to go, what's just like one I could look at? What's the quickest one? Like, you're going to not want to do that, but you have to do it sometimes. Let's say you want to be creative. If you want to be creative, you need to use divergent thinking. If you want to be, if you want to do advanced research, sometimes you'll use divergent. There's a lot of reasons you might use that, right? In general, it's when you're studying many topics at once and your thinking is going outward. Convergent thinking is the exact opposite. When your thinking is coming inward and it's converging to a single topic. So after you've researched the 50 frameworks that are possible that you could learn, you then spend 10 minutes with a piece of paper and you go, let's converge on a single framework. Let's converge on a single topic that I'm actually going to focus on for the next 1 month. That's convergent thinking. And by the way, if you're a P type in the Myers-Briggs, you're not going to want to do that. If you're the type of person that's like, you know what, I've jumped from language to language to language to framework to framework to framework, that's you. And without even knowing you, you're a P type. Okay. Your like desire is to explore. Okay. And that's great. But you have to kind of like, look, you have to manage yourself, guys. I mean, the most important book you'll ever read, Managing Oneself by Peter Drucker. You have to be able to manage yourself. If you want to make six figures, the only thing between you and six figures, or even mid six figures, my mentor taught me this a long time ago, and I'm right there with you. I need to learn this more too. Like, I'm right here with you guys, but I know this to be true, that the only thing holding you back is your ability to manage yourself. That's the only thing holding you back from that. Now, if you want to get to seven figures, etc., it's a little bit different. Okay. That's not just managing yourself, that's managing other people. Okay. But the only thing holding you back at first is knowing who you are, what's your personality type, and then how do you manipulate that such that you can actually get the results that you want based on the challenges that you're facing right now. Like, if you switch from yoga to weight training to CrossFit and you can never stick with one thing, that's because you're a P type. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just understand it. And instead go, you know what? I'm going to allow myself to switch, but I'm only going to switch after doing one type for 3 months. You have to actually make progress. You can't just switch one day CrossFit, one day this, one day this. You have to actually pick one and make progress. So if you're a P type, great. Make a decision, though, that you're going to spend 3 months on a framework, 3 months on a language, 3 months on this training type, right? No matter what it is. Could be chess. You're learning chess, right? You're going to spend 3 months learning it. And then you could be a P type and switch to something else. Like, that's totally fine. So you have to manage yourself, guys. Okay. And then I love this question. What is the future of coding in 2120, I guess, or what is the future of coding in 100 years? So honestly, this is, I don't know, to be completely frank with you. I don't know. How will people learn? I think I do know, maybe not relevant for this conversation, but the future of coding, I don't know. A lot of people are saying that programming won't be here. People won't be coding. Here's my intuition. Okay. My intuition. I don't want to be negative. This isn't really negative, but this is my intuition. Okay. Here's the deal. You know how, like, on the highway, when they build a bridge, they take like a component of the bridge and they like bring it into the, like there's a big bridge being built and they have like a piece that they need to build. Right. So they have like some company that pre-built this piece. And they bring like a machine that like lifts it. And there's like 6 people. Notice what I just said. There's like 6 people working on the bridge. So there's still people, guys. This isn't negative. And they kind of like bring this big component of the bridge and they chink it in and they connect it and stuff. That's kind of the vibe I get as to how coding will be in the future. There will still be people like you and I programming. We will still be needed. We will still be required. And in fact, let me give you a mind hack. I think we'll be paid a lot more because it will be a lot more difficult. But on the surface, it may seem simpler because I think what we're going to be doing in the future far more is like chinking together big components that are already pre-built. And guys, that's what we do already. Like if you use Ruby, I've been using Rails for the past like 10 years. That's all we do. There's like coding and like you write a lot of code, blah, blah, blah. Like most of the stuff is like, take this library, connect it with the output of this library. I think in the future, it's going to be far more like specific, like the output of this goes into this, and you can almost imagine it like a visual, like there will probably be some kind of visual UI tool where you can actually pull things in and like chink them together and be like, I want this API to connect with this API. It'll be like a visual kind of like board on your computer or like 3D, right? Like hologram, like the Apple AR glasses, like you're probably like moving shit around. That's probably, if I had to guess, guys, that's probably what it's going to be like, which is not bad. Okay. Okay. How old were you and when did you realize that our brains were supercomputers, and what are you currently do to push yourself more? So this is a person asking a question about a great concept that I have, which is like, you have a supercomputer in your brain, right? We talked about this earlier as well. You have a supercomputer in your brain. And so you think, I don't know if I could learn that. I could literally slap you. Like if you said that to me, like, I don't know if I could learn that. Like, guys, you have a supercomputer in your brain. You can't learn that? You can't learn that? Like, that's so obscenely ridiculous. Like, that is so ridiculous. You could learn absolutely anything. And let me give you a mind fuck here. You could learn it on the fly. Like if you had to learn something on the fly that was extremely complicated, guess what? You could. Now, nobody wants to hear this, but this is the truth. Okay. The degree to which, let me rephrase this. The speed at which you learn something is directly related to the degree of pressure that's on you. Nobody wants to hear that. You guys are veterans. Like, so, hopefully you understand that a little bit more than the average person, but the more pressure and stress that's on the human being. And by the way, stress is like seen as a bad word, but it's actually a positive thing. So the more pressure that's on the human being, the human organism, the more we could do, the more we can, like the quicker our brain, like it's just the way it is. Like I can't explain, I'm not a freaking biologist or whatever, but that's just in my experience in 20 plus tech jobs working with like thousands of people. That's just the way it is. Okay. So if you really want to learn something really quickly, like let's say you're in a bad situation and you really need to turn it around, put a bunch of pressure on yourself and not in your own mind. This isn't what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about internal pressure. Like I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I'm sad. I'm not that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about external pressure beaming down on you. Like you go and talk yourself into a job where you have to write JavaScript code and you've never written JavaScript code before. And it just so happens to be for the second largest bidding site in the United States. Oh, and it just so happens you're the only front-end JavaScript developer. Oh, and it just so happens they want a JavaScript test suite. Oh, and it just so happens you're going to be fired in 2 weeks if you don't figure it out. Like that sounds like absolutely insane, but I promise you that is like a perfect scenario for performance. You will perform. Sink or swim, right? You'll sink or swim. And I think most people that are listening to this right now are not the type of people to sink. If you just refuse to sink, I refuse to fucking fail at this. I've never coded JavaScript before. Talked myself into the job through like a side channel or whatever. I will do whatever it takes to make this happen. You want me to learn this? Okay, I'm at home the night before learning it. That's what I was doing, right? I had that same scenario. I was at home the night before. I would literally look at the task board and be like, what do I have to do tomorrow? Okay, let me go home and kind of learn that tonight and focus on like, what do I need to like, okay, I need to learn Mocha. Back in like 2013, when I was going through this scenario, Mocha JS was like a test JavaScript, like test unit for like like I don't know how to explain it. It's like a library for writing JavaScript tests, right? I didn't know what it was. So literally the night before I had to start doing the code for it, I was at home learning it. And by learning it, what I mean was I had a clone of the entire project on my laptop. And I would open the project on my laptop and literally write it as if I was replicating being there tomorrow. So, like, I see, it wouldn't have helped if I would have just read about it. It wouldn't have helped if I would have just watched about it. Like, I had to literally type the code, like, okay, this is a replica of what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. Let me work on it right now. Guys, you have to be actually doing, like, to learn as fast as humanly possible, you have to be doing. You can't be watching only. You can't be reading only. You have to be doing it. Okay? I mean, pretty straightforward. This is like pretty logical. So, like, thus far. Okay, I got some questions from the crowd as well. Awesome. Victor Campos, talk about how QA is not there to find a developer's bug. How do you find that QA is a developer's friend? Yeah, this is a really good question. QA is like a really close relationship. Victor, I love this question. So QA and development is like a very close relationship. Okay, so there's a number of like issues with the way developers view QA. Number one is they don't take ownership. So let's just skip all the bullshit I could say here. The number one thing is take ownership. If you write code, take ownership of absolutely every aspect of it. I write code and it might interfere with this code this other guy wrote. I'm not going to wait for QA to find it. I'm going to go over to that other developer. Sorry, I hit the mic. I'm going to go over to that other developer and go, hey, man, I just wrote some code. I have a feeling it's going to interfere with something you're writing. Can we like talk about it for a sec, or can you look over my shoulder and just see what you think? Like, or can you review my pull request? Like, I'm going to try to own it as much as humanly possible. You see, this way, think about it. All the negative relationships with QA come from when QA feels like we don't care about them. When they feel like our babysitter. When developers are like, here's some code, you figure it out. Like like it's almost like developers are like, here's the code. Your job is to get it into production. That's so ridiculous. That's so ridiculous. And by the way, I don't care if you have a development team and a QA team and a DevOps team that get like, if the job is literally yours to just write the code and that's it, I don't care. You still have to have the same level of ownership as if you were actually pushing the code into production yourself and QAing it yourself. So that way, and by the way, this doesn't take much time. Don't act like this takes so much time. Like, you wrote the code, only you could test it faster than anybody else. So therefore, don't give me like, oh, it takes too much time. Dude, you wrote the code. You could test it faster than anybody else. Okay. Just give it a cursory test. Maybe give like a quick analysis of what might break. Go ahead and reach out to anybody that you might think this code interferes with. Go ahead and reach out to QA, let them know, hey, I've been testing it. Here's the results of my test thus far. I wrote some test code TDD. TDD is very important here, right? Like, I tested what I wrote as I wrote it. So here you can actually see my file with all my TDD tests. So you should be set up for success. So the QA team goes, perfect. I'm set up for success. You're my friend. Clearly, I can tell you're my friend by how you behave, not by what you say. What you say is completely pointless. How you behave in a tech company, and really any company, is the only thing that matters. Okay. But that is a good question. No, Victor, keep asking, man. Yeah, so you're saying Victor basically asked, I don't mean to he basically says other developers find him intrusive when he says a developer's job should include performing QA's test cases. Okay, so let me give you like some advice that changed my life. There's something called, and don't look this up, okay? Let me just like give you the word in the way I want to give it to you, okay? There's something called controlled folly, okay? This is a technique used by Native Americans thousands of fucking years ago. Okay. Now, the definition online is different than what I'm going to say, but here's the deal. You basically have people throughout your life that expect you to behave in a certain way. And sometimes they can feel, if you just behave straight up however you want, sometimes they can feel a certain type of way. Right? Like that developer that you're talking about, he could be like, man, this guy's kind of like trying to one up me here. Controlled folly is basically the ability to present to every individual what they want to be presented. So to that developer, you would communicate to him that you're just trying to make sure that your code, specifically the code that you wrote, is solid. And you could even say something that is what's the word where it like is like not self-aggrandizing, like it's like almost like self-defeating. Like you could be like, well, I'm actually just worried like I'll get in trouble if I don't do this right. That's controlled folly. You know, you're doing it because you're taking ownership. You have ulterior motives to be, the best developer, whatever. But you don't want this other developer peer of yours to be like, man, this guy's like fucking me over here, he's trying to one up me. No, 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 no. You want him to be like, I get it, he's looking out for himself, and I should probably look out for myself. Like, come up with, and by the way, guys, this takes creativity. This is a super advanced topic. Okay. I'm not going to go super deep on this. This goes to the very depth of the way you behave as a human being, but in all ways, you could use controlled folly. So when I walk into a gas station and the gas station, and maybe my mom just died, which didn't happen, thank God, knock on wood, but let's say my mom just died. The guy at the gas station goes, hey, how are you? I go, good. How are you? I'm not good. My mom just died. Knock on wood. That's not true, right? But the point is, that's controlled folly. The gas station guy expects me to say, good, how are you? Because it's a folly of the way that the human society has been structured. That developer is reacting in the sense of a folly of the way that the team has been structured. So are you actually gonna let the folly of the way a team has been structured or the way society has been structured impact your capabilities and your potential? That's total BS. Okay. You need to manipulate and engineer this situation. And by the way, manipulate not in a bad way. You don't want to manipulate people to be like hurt or anything. You want to do it to help them, if that makes sense. Super, like, that's a very in-depth answer. I mean, it's like a very kind of weird answer, I guess, but that's just the way it is. Yeah. So can you share your thoughts on developers using QA test canvas to test their code? So honestly, this isn't really a super big issue, QA test code on the developer's code. I don't really, can you elaborate? I don't see why that would be a huge issue. You could do TDD and make sure that your code is specifically tested and that you have your code like prepped up and ready to go from a like unit perspective. I have like feature tests. I have my unit test. I might have like more like a controller test or whatever, they call those nowadays, whatever. So you have like different layers of testing. And then as far as like, if the QA engineer, if there's a QA engineering team and they actually write QA test code, then that's not your responsibility. You don't want to go like, you don't, that's different code. Like I worked with a team that wrote Node.js QA test code that used Node to like attach to the UI and run UI tests. I'm not really going to be the person that goes in there and writes code for him. Because like I don't need to, because I've tested my code. I've manually tested everything that he's going to write automated tests for. So why do I need to go in and do the duplicate work of testing my code with the code that he's going to write? That's totally duplicate, right? I've manually gone in and tested my UI. And then I've like actually written my model test, my feature test, my whatever they call controller test nowadays, whatever, I've done that. So therefore, I don't like, you can allow the QA team to this is another controlled folly thing. You have to let the QA team take ownership of their world. You don't want to put your foot too far over the line, but at the same time, are you going to let that stop you from taking ownership? Guys, this is super nuanced. Okay. This is not like a simple topic here. Okay. This is like a super nuanced topic. In general, in life, you're going to constantly come up to situations where you're like, I'm trying to take ownership, but other people are going to feel disrespected. Other people are going to feel like I'm stepping over the line. Other people are like, you have to use controlled folly. What does he want to hear right now? What is his world that he's trying to own that I don't necessarily want to step into? I still want to take ownership of my world so that I can have the maximum impact and reduce the challenge in his world. Right. So, yeah, thanks guys, Michael. Yeah, it's a super interesting concept. Again, it impacts every aspect of life. My wife has this issue all the time, like with her mom. Her mom is super, like let's use a political example. I'm not political, so I'm not going to say anything, but like, let's say you're at Thanksgiving dinner. Okay. This is a great example for controlled folly. You're at Thanksgiving dinner. Um, the table is talking politics, and it's the exact opposite politics you believe. Let's say you're Republican, they speak liberal. Let's say you're liberal, they speak Republican, right? Everybody believes something you don't. Are you actually going to damage your relationships with your family members that you love because of something that came out of their mouth? If you did that, that wouldn't be controlled folly. That would be basically, it would be lack of wisdom to do that. So it would be extremely wise to somehow steer the conversation in a way that you could agree with them. Somehow steer the conversation, okay? Such that you can actually show that you're on the same side as them, right? This is not easy, but this comes up in everyday life all the time for many, many people. Okay, most people fail at this big time. So let's go. Michael, feel free to ask a question. Victor, please ask more questions. I love these questions, Victor. Got more here in the pre-call checklist, so let's go through these. What's your reading schedule? What's one of the hardest technical problems you've solved? Okay, so let's stick with those two. So the hardest technical problem, it's a good question. Probably, I mean, it sounds weird maybe, but the mid-roll podcast advertising application. So I was director of engineering technology at a company called Midroll. We acquired Stitcher in 2017, super long time ago, guys, 2016, something like that, long time ago. And I was director of engineering technology at both those companies for a while. And I think the way that the Midroll, they had a Rails application, a Ruby on Rails application that I did not build it. It was built by some agency. And it was funny. The agency that built it runs the honeybadger.io application, which I don't even know still exists. The honeybadger.io core team is actually on the Rails core team. So a member of the Rails core team, just from God's, like just total luck, like it was just total random luck, but a member of the Rails core team ended up working on an agency. And that agency ended up getting hired by Midroll to build the first version of this podcast advertising inventory management application. It was the most complicated. I have never seen, I'm going to tell you, I'm just being honest. I felt like a child. Like I've been able to pretty much master anything I've touched as far as tech wise. I literally, every day I opened that application, I was like, I am a child. I do not get anything here. And the funny thing was they had me assigned with one of those team members. It wasn't the Rails core team. It was another member of that team to ask questions. And when I asked him questions, he was like a robot, meaning I would be like, hey man, can you walk me through this code? Or does this function do this? And he would be like, yes. He was literally like a robot. He'd be like, no, yes, no. He wouldn't like elaborate. So I'm really somebody that needs to have like some elaboration to understand the context in order to understand it. I think everybody's like that. So I really just felt like so childlike. I was like, I don't understand the code. I spent hundreds of hours in this application, right? Just the application was allowing sales guys to book $1 million campaigns for like 50 companies, Doritos, et cetera, all these different companies. And there would be bugs. Like the sales guy would send me a screenshot and there's a campaign being built and it's $1 million campaign that he's going to get commission for. So he's pumped up and then he clicks submit and there's a Rails like error. And he sends me the screenshot with like the $1 million campaign, like the $1 million sum is right there. And then it's like error. And I'm the only tech hire, the only tech hire in the entire multiple companies. Right. So it's like, see, so this is actually a good topic is like, one thing is you don't typically want to be, like one thing that I've noticed guys is like, if you're, I don't want to, how should I phrase this? You don't want to do everything yourself. Like, let's say one of you gets the opportunity to be a CTO or a co-founder at a tech company. I guarantee one of you listening is so like savvy that you could probably build everything that company needs on your own. That's what happened with me. And except for this specific sub application, right? I'm not talking about that. But everything else I could build, so I never needed to hire anybody, right? And that was a huge mistake. They kept asking me to hire people, and I kept just being like, fuck it, I'll just do it. It'll be faster if I do it, right? So this is a big mistake I made, Okay. So one thing that I would have done differently if I had that job today was I would have slowed down and I would have acted more like a leader. And I would have said, what am I going to need 10 years from now, 5 years from now in this job to be successful? I'm probably going to need a little team of badasses. So I'm going to hire a Rails guy, a real expert Rails guy for this. I'm going to hire an expert iOS guy for this. I'm going to hire an expert Android guy for this. We ended up doing some of that. We ended up hiring an iOS guy from Australia. We flew him over. He used to be an editor of TV shows, fishing TV shows in Australia. And this is a case study for you guys. All you guys that want to get a tech job, here's a case study. I met a guy on Twitter, became really good friends with him just via Twitter, just chatting back and forth. And he wanted to learn to code. So I told him to try to build an app. He built an iOS app. It was a calculator. It was kind of pretty, but it wasn't like super advanced. It was real pretty though. He's like, has a skill for design. So, you have some kind of skill, and that's it. He didn't do anything else. He didn't have any website. He didn't have any portfolio. He didn't have anything else, just this app. And that was enough for me to be like, I'm going to hire him, move him from Australia to the United States and pay him $100,000+ salary. And after 6.5 years of working on an iOS app, he became the chief product officer at Stitcher. So he went from iOS developer, never been in the tech industry before, was editing TV shows in Australia, not famous TV shows like fishing shows and shit, making no money. And now he's he's basically chief product officer and chief designer, total badass, just super genius guy. And he's one of the smartest dudes I've ever met. So like that's why I'm so like, I always tell you guys to put yourself out there, make a blog, make something, put something out there. Cause this guy, I talked to him enough and he had a Twitter, and I knew he was above average intelligence. I knew he was just like, something was super different. He was super out. Like he's one of the smartest guys I've ever met. I'm just going to be honest with you. He's one of these guys that can take like when we bought Stitcher, the podcast app at Midroll. And there was this a scenario where we actually had to migrate all the users from Stitcher to Midroll or something like that, right? Some kind of like migration of users, super complicated. I'm not making this up. This is all true story. The product officer at the company, super like technical, complicated guy. He comes from Amazon. He was a former marketing manager at Amazon. He made a flow chart of the possible flows at which people could come into the app from this other platform. And there was 38 flows. Like there was 38 possible, like the chart was like pages and pages long. It was 38 flows that people could take to get there. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not adding any numbers to that. I remember it in my head to this day because I was like, we were all just jaw dropped. Like, this is so complicated. AJC, that guy that I was just telling you about, the iOS developer, he's one of these guys that I always leaned on because he's somebody that can simplify. He's a simplifier. He's a convergent thinker. Dain, the other one, was a divergent thinker. So he was thinking of every possible scenario. So AJC, I said, AJC, can you take a crack at this? For some reason, I just have a hunch that you could make this a little bit simpler. He came up with a way to get 3 flows. That's it. 3 possible flows from 38. It was like one of the scenario, that was the one scenario where I was like, this guy is going to run the entire company one day. This guy is a fucking super genius. I'm maybe hyping him up a little bit because he's my boy, but like he really is somebody that I really looked up to as like, he's a simplifier. Guys, if any of you guys can be like that, simplify, man. The value of simplification. A lot of people are like, man, it's so complicated to be in tech. I'm going to be honest with you. The biggest thing a company values is a simplifier. I'm technical, but I'm able to simplify. Okay. Super kind of deep topic, but yeah. What's your favorite cloud platform? AWS, MS Azure, Google Cloud, and why, and what are their benefits, advantages over each other? So yeah. Honestly, I'm not sure. I think AWS is what I've always used. I don't really have a lot of familiarity with Google Cloud or Azure. I know people that use them. I know the former Brian Beckham or something. I don't know him personally, but I know of him through the PIF network. Brian something. He was a chief scientist at Microsoft, brought from like this time warp operating system in the late 90s. And then from Microsoft, he went to found Amazon's Air division. He was one of the first 3 programmers that built the infrastructure for what we're going to see in the future, the drone delivery system from Amazon. He's got like 100 patents submitted at Amazon. He recently quit Amazon to go found his own company. And I know he uses Azure, and he swears by it. He only uses Azure. He's like famous for that. But I use AWS. I've never really used anything else. So Google, though, I know Google has a pretty good one. And then let me answer some of these other questions here. What's one of the hardest non-technical problems you've solved? Yeah, so that was the hardest technical problem. Obviously, the like 38 flows simplified in the mid-roll app. The hardest non-technical problem would be just leadership in general. So as you guys grow in your career, you could pick one of three paths, or one of two paths, really. There's three, but we'll simplify it. Like a management path, or a leadership path, or like an independent contributor path. An independent contributor path is like, I'm a developer, and then become a senior developer, then I become a principal developer or architect. And then, that's pretty solid. That's a pretty solid path, right? You could make a lot of money. You could have a lot of fun. Or you could pick more of a management path, which is like, I become a developer, then I become a team lead or a senior developer, and then a team lead, and then a director of engineering, and then a VP or a CTO. And if you're curious about the difference there, CTO and VP work hand in hand. So a CTO is somebody that focuses on the future of the organization's technology, and the VP of engineering focuses on the people. That's the way it works in the organization. Specifically, the people in the engineering organization and the structure of those people, right? So for me, the biggest non-technical challenge was exactly that. So I was like the apprentice VP of engineering when we worked with a consulting VP of engineering at Stitcher to figure out how to fix that company. And so I was kind of like driving a lot of that change with him, just co-working with him every day. And that was very difficult of like, how do you build, we have 7 teams that are isolated functional teams: iOS, Android, ingestion. All these teams are very isolated, and there's a bug on iOS. Guess what? That same bug is on Android. Guess what? That same bug is in web. And by the way, we fix that bug in iOS. Nobody else knows about it. Android fixes that bug 3 weeks later. Nobody knows about it. Web fixes that bug. Like this is a shit show. So like there was a process we had to go through of killing all of those teams and reorganizing the company into pods, where like there's a pod of people and they all work on one part of the platform across every device. So they might work on media, and that media team has an iOS guy, an Android guy, and a web guy. And when the web guy finds a bug, the iOS and Android guys, they both know about it. So this is like a much more efficient this is kind of the biggest challenge that I went through, is like learning how to do that. Good question though. When you were thinking about from Michael, when you were thinking about new software projects or adding features, what is your mental model for chasing down problem sets? What does it look like in a convergent divergent model? When you're thinking about new software projects or adding features, what is your mental model? So Michael, I'm not sure if you're overthinking that or overcomplicating that. A lot of the times people overcomplicate this shit. When I use like advanced terminology, like convergent, divergent stuff, like don't overthink this stuff. Okay. Like if you're going to build something, build it. Like, don't think about it too much. Just start building it and then look up on Google how to build it. Like, it's not that complicated. I mean, like a lot of that super esoteric stuff, like controlled follians, you don't need to use that right at the beginning. That's stuff that you more need to use once you get into a company and you start having some influence with like convergent, divergent. That's really not something that you need to use unless you're struggling deeply. If you're really struggling deeply, that's when I start to coach somebody, like a coaching client. I do coaching. That's when I introduce them to that. Like if they've been stuck for a year, like I'll kind of help them with that. It's an issue with convergent, divergent stuff, right? For you, if you've been stuck, like we could definitely go into that. But I think honestly, if I'm looking at a software project and adding features, I'm just going to say, what are the features that I need to add? And then who has added those features in the past? Do I know how to write that code? If not, where do I go on Google to figure out what tutorial or what resource is going to show me how to write that code so that I can learn it? And then I open it and immediately start typing what I'm seeing. And then my brain is going to connect all the stuff that I've done in my past 10 years, or for you, let's say it's you, the past 1 year or 2 years or however long you've been. And your brain will start connecting the new information with the old information, and the nodes in your brain, they connect. Boop. And then you learn. That's how learning happens, guys. So I know people are like, how do I learn? Your learning is just connecting old contextual nodes to new data. That's all it is. Super simple. So the quickest way that I teach it is to open a tutorial resource. Like, what's something that can teach me? Like, a great example is like, let's say I'm trying to make a web app. I use the book rental application all the time. So let's say I'm trying to make a library application where I can rent books and it's a list of books. And the feature is I need to add the list of books. Like, I have maybe the user authentication part, but I don't have any list of books yet. So what I'm going to do is in my head, I'm going to go, okay, what like resource can I use to pull a list together? Well, let's say I'm using Rails, right? I'm going to Google, or in my head, I'm first going to think, okay, what's a list? A list in Rails of books is the same thing as a list of blog posts. It's the same thing as like a list of to-do items. So I'm going to Google, like, because I know people write tutorials on how to build a to-do list with Ruby, how to build a blog with Rails, how to build a to-do list with Rails. So I'm going to Google how, that I'm going to pull up that tutorial. I'm going to scroll to the tutorial where it shows me how to build the list of to-do items. Then I'm going to take that code and I'm not going to copy and paste it. I'm going to type it. Never copy and paste it. I'm going to type that section of code that shows me how to build that list, because the code is the same. It's what goes inside of the dynamic processed code that changes. And by the way, that comes from the database. What are the columns in the database? What are the rows in the database? The code is the exact same. Okay. So every feature has the same code. The only thing that makes features look different across every language, every framework, is what is coming dynamically into the code, because code is formal language. Formal language, by definition, isn't informal. That's kind of maybe a weird answer, but it's just the way it is, right? Cool. So another question here. What's your framework in building yourself to understand and learn things very quickly? I heard you talk about mass acquisition. Could you expand upon that? What was the biggest factor to your growth? Yeah, like what the fastest way to learn something is, that's a great question because we just talked about it, right? The fastest way to learn something is literally to start typing it. And I'm assuming we're talking about code, right? Like if let's say it's not about code, then I'm going to have there's something called swarm learning, which is like really a successful model for learning. Let's say you have 6 books on the same topic, open all the books and put them in front of you. Start reading through all of them at the same time. Oh my God, I've never done that. I can't read but one book at a time. You have a supercomputer in your brain. You could read as many books as you want. Okay. You could read 6 books at the same time. Nobody ever does it because they don't have creativity. Okay. Nobody wants to hear this. This is not advice anybody's given, but it's the truth. Okay. You could do it. Same applies for code. If I want to learn how to do a certain feature or some kind of new framework, I'm going to do like 60. I used to tell people 30 tutorials. Honestly, I'll do 50 tutorials. Like back in the day when I wanted to learn JavaScript, like test driving TDD in JavaScript, I just did like for an entire month when I was at home at night after work, I would do tutorial after tutorial. I mean, just so many. How to do this in Mocha, how to do this in, this unit testing framework. And I would just do it over and over and over and over. And eventually I actually built my own, like, I believe you should do testing like this. And I had my own belief system by the end of that. Like, honestly, like, I don't know much about Ruby, but I have my own belief system now about how to write good Ruby. I don't know much about JavaScript, but I have my own belief system about how to write good JavaScript because I've done it so many times that I don't need to be an academic about JavaScript. I've done it so many times in so many practical real world scenarios that I know, okay, this is kind of the best practice. And same with Ruby. I'm not an academic. I don't do a lot of like contributions to the Rails or the Ruby repo, right? But that doesn't mean I don't know the best practices for do that. And again, just from doing it over and over and over. It's just something you got to do. Next question. What do you think is the state of the world and state of the nation? What can we do to individually chip in and make the world a better place? Any app or project ideas? So this is a little bit over my pay grade, obviously. I'm not somebody that's like fixing the world right now. I do think that everybody right now is way too selfish in general. And all you listening to this, if you're a veteran, you're probably not, right? It's probably the civilians out there that are this way. We're probably all too selfish is the general gist. Like we're all too focused on ourselves, what we want, what we can do. I've wanted to write this book for a long time called The Helping Habit. which is basically like, if you want to help yourself, help somebody else. And it's the truth. Like, if you want to help yourself, help somebody else so much until it comes back on you. And, I think if everybody did that, things would be a lot different. Um, I do think that, like, with technology, there's a lot of people in my like circle that are thinking, you probably heard this, the internet's like a bad idea. Like, this went around a few years ago, right? It went around maybe 4 or 5 years ago when the Facebook investors were coming out, Chamath Palihapitiya and Sean was coming out saying it was a bad idea to make Facebook. We're making the world a worse place. It's not a better place, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of people in like high level circles now talking about that's probably true. It's probably not a good idea. The problem is it's here to stay. It's here to stay. There's no undoing this. There's no putting the rabbit back in the box. So we have to now take this scenario that we've created for ourselves and we have to make it better. So every time you go online and you complain about something, every time you go online and create more division, every time you go online and you tweet about something that's negative about something else, about some political party or somebody else, even if you truly believe it, you're adding to the problem. You're simply adding to the problem. You could believe these things. Don't add to the problem. Don't create more division. Don't create more problems. Like, let's try to unify over here. I mean, this is an absolute nightmare right now. Like, this is the worst. And, every generation thinks it's the worst generation. So I'm not going to be, myopic to think that's not the case here. But at the same time, it is, Russia is probably pretty happy right now, right? Like, how divided we are. And a lot of this stuff, it comes down to like the Elon thing of like Elon actually finding out how many bots are on Twitter, like how many bots, like a great example is like, this is pretty inside baseball, but there are some pips that work on data crunching, like data processing at a pretty high level. And there's some inside baseball stuff going on where like, when the COVID pandemic hit, there was a lot of bots retweeting or like rewriting and posting the same, like, same tweet about, there's a specific tweet they found where it's like, there's a guy, he works in a hospital and he was running around and everybody was hiding. Like, all the nurses were like hiding or something. Basically it was fear. Like, it was somebody who worked in a hospital and he was like so afraid because the hospitals were overwhelmed. And they found, like, there was some inside baseball talk, like they found the exact bot that was running this and creating thousands of versions of this tweet. I mean, this shit happens every day, right? So when we log into Twitter and we're like kind of getting hyped up, or we see news and we're getting hyped up, it might not be a human doing this. I know this isn't new. This is like not news to anybody. This is like obvious. But at the same time, we have to keep this in mind, right? So if you want to help the world, like, you're going to buy into it. Like, you can certainly believe things, but you're going to promulgate negativity. Not a good time. Not a good time. Focus on your mission. Don't be so selfish, though. Focus on your mission, half yours and then half helping other people. It's the only logical approach. If you're logical, 50-50. The only logical approach, 50-50. 50% for you, 50% for other people. Absolute common sense logic, okay? So 50% of the time working on stuff for you, 50% of the time going, you know what? I have learned a little bit about coding. Let me hop into the Fall In Slack. Let me hop into this like group. How can I help you guys? Hey, I've spent 2 years learning to code. How can I help you guys? Like, that would be a very, very positive use of time for you. That's just the way it is. So how do we get to the forefront of new tech such that veterans can be more up to date on technology? So yeah, this is like something Jamil mentioned. Jamil runs the Fall In Hackathons. You guys met. You guys know Jamil. So apparently he said, and this is like news to me, but I trust his belief. So he believes that veterans sometimes are behind, like you're a little bit behind as far as like new technological advancements. Like, that's not that big of a problem. If you really want to be on the cutting edge, though, what I will say is a great way to do that is RSS feeds. This is something that I've been teaching my coaching students for a long time. It's not really that hard. This isn't like news to anybody. RSS feeds have been around forever. But literally be intelligent about it. Like, I'll have my students make an RSS feed. Like, let's say you're a JavaScript guy. First of all, you have to pick. What language do you want to focus on? Do you want to focus? And by the way, my concept of the subconscious learning system, that's what I teach people to learn to code with. The very first step is to pick a language and framework that you're going to focus on 100% until you get that first job. Okay. Or if you already have a job, until you get to the next level. So for now, let's say you don't have a job and you're going to pick. So just pick randomly. There's millions of languages. They all have jobs related to them. You can reverse engineer, but for now, let's just pick. Let's say it's Python, Django. So honestly, like a lot of the times what I'll do is I'll have them create an RSS, use Readly, or there's a bunch, like Reader is like a free reading app on the Mac. And you'll create a folder, and then you go Google top Python Twitter news feeds, top Python news blogs, top Python GitHub pages. And like I'll Google all that, or the student will, and then we'll take all of those top Python news YouTube channels and put all of that, because you can actually convert all of those into RSS feeds. I don't know if you knew that. So you take all those and you use resources online to convert all of that into RSS feeds, put that into one folder, call it Python. So that way, when you open your RSS feed, you click that folder and then you scroll through, you're up to date. Super easy, right? So if it's JavaScript, you need to focus on what area of JavaScript. Are you a React guy? Are you a Vue guy? Are you an Ember guy, Angular guy? Because each of those areas has a vastly different world. Are you a TypeScript guy? Maybe you play in a bunch of different sandboxes, but you're a TypeScript guy. So you'll find all the Twitters related to that and focus on creating an RSS folder for that. That's just like, and by the way, newsletters. I don't know if you guys know this, but with newsletters, let's say there's 4 or 5 JavaScript newsletters that are incredible. They have some of the best up-to-date knowledge and information. There's websites, if you go to on Google, you can actually find past issues. There's apps that let you pull up past issues of newsletters, even if it's on different platforms, like a MailChimp newsletter or a whatever newsletter. Like you could find past issues, and then you can generate an RSS feed from that app. And then you could put that RSS feed in the reader. So you don't actually have to use the email. You just open your reader and you have all the issues there. So this is like a really nice way to do it. Next question, why am I continuing to get stuck even though I am? So this is another question from Jamil. So he mentioned that developers sometimes are like, or veterans are really hungry for information, but a lot of the times you guys can still get stuck. And I think that's common with everybody. So I think everybody can get stuck. So that's like fairly common, but what I think is going on here, and I see this a lot, where you're very hungry, like you're committed and passionate about learning, but you're stuck. So this may be the last question if nobody else has another question, but honestly, the solution here is a courageous one. Like you have to have courage or some kind of like ability to hack the process or not follow rules. Like you don't have to follow rules, right? Like you don't have to. You should follow ethical rules. You should follow moral rules. I'm not talking about that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about rules like get a certificate if you want to be a cybersecurity guy. That's a rule. You don't have to follow that fucking rule. You don't have to get a certificate. Okay, my God. This is so like, are you that not, do you lack that much courage? You're so scared that you have to be system oriented. You know what this is? This is a system orientation that humans have developed because of fear. You have fear, you lack courage, you lack self-confidence, you lack self-esteem, which you had in the military. Everybody here is a veteran. You had all that shit in the military. Take that shit and apply it to this. You have a supercomputer in your head, so you should have as much courage and as much self-confidence as you imagine is possible, because this fucking supercomputer will do whatever you want it to. Therefore, if you want to achieve something, you can just go get it. What is the fastest path to get from here to there? I need to get a job. Let's create something that's creative, like a blog or a portfolio using tutorials to build a web application that I actually write myself. I don't copy paste. I actually build the web app myself, put it on a portfolio, have a little blog with 3 posts, have a Twitter account with like 12 posts, have my face on the website, and then send 60 job applications. Oh, I got a job. Like I could have waited 2 years to do that, but I just got a job. Like, I mean, guys, you could do that in 26 days, 25 days. So anytime you're stuck, absolutely anytime you're stuck, okay, comes down to I'm not using as much courage as I should be. I'm not hacking this system as much as I can, okay? And by the way, let me back up a minute. A lot of you guys I've noticed just in general, humans don't want to hack systems or like skip steps because yeah, you have fear, yeah, you lack all that stuff, but on a surface level, you feel like, well, what if I say I can do something and I don't live up to it? Like, what if I send those job applications and they hire me and then I fail? Well, here's the thing, right? Like, that's a legit question. Like, here's the thing though. Are you ethical? Are you an ethical person? Do you have morals? Do you have ethics? I'm going to assume yes. Okay. I'm going to assume you are. If you're an ethical person and somebody sends you $1,000 and says, can you figure this out for me? You're either going to send them the money back or figure it the fuck out. Correct? So if somebody says, I'll pay you 60K a year, you're a junior developer. I know you're new to this. You've done some stuff in the past. It looks like on your portfolio there. Can you just figure out how to do this? You're going to be like, I'm ethical. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to go home. I'm going to figure this out. Sorry, I can't talk to you. You have a wife. Sorry, I can't talk to you for the next 3 hours. I got to figure this shit out. I've got ethical duties to my job to not let them down. So if you're ethical, then you should have self-confidence. If you're ethical, you should have courage. If you're ethical, you should not have fear. I think a lot of people have little crimes, like you're doing shit you don't like. Maybe you're doing drugs or doing, I mean, maybe not you guys, but a lot of people I meet, they're doing stuff they don't like about themselves. Like, oh, I know I shouldn't have done that, but I did it anyway. That's going to, like, it's going to erode your self confidence. Shouldn't be doing drugs, shouldn't be stealing. Like, you guys all know this, you're veterans, right? But like civilians, I see this all the time. I don't know about your community, but I see civilians where they do these like little micro crimes. Maybe it's not even that big of a deal, right? Like, maybe they borrowed money and they don't like send it back. It's like, and I've made that mistake, right? Like, I've made the same mistake. So it's like, you have to go back and fix those issues. Otherwise, you're going to have a subconscious loop in your head that goes, I don't do what I say. I don't do what I say I will. I don't do what I say I will. Dude, this is a nightmare. If you have a subconscious loop that says, I don't do what I say I will, kiss everything goodbye. Kiss your future goodbye. Kiss your fucking career goodbye. Kiss all that shit. The biggest hack that I've learned from a $5,000 coach that I hired a long time ago, not recently, a long time ago, was go back into your past and fix every single thing that you fucked up. This is a super advanced concept I'm not going to get into, and it goes very, very deep. But everything in your past that you fucked up, or you made a mistake, or you lied, cheated, steal, did something you know you shouldn't have, you got to go back and fix it. Even if you stole candy. Like, let's say you worked at this restaurant, you stole a pie every day. Well, you got to go back and you got to pay back for those pies because it's still in your head. And the fact that it's still subconsciously deeply buried in your head is going to impact how quick you can get a job today. I know this sounds crazy, sounds super out there, but this is just the way it is, guys. Okay, so nobody's going to be talking about this except, I mean, they'll talk about this shit in another 100 years, I tell you that. Anyway, so do you guys have any more questions? We will stay. Okay, yeah, Victor. Would you recommend learning via a coding boot camp or finding someone to mentor you? Yeah, so here's the deal. Boot camps are about the biggest scam that's ever been perpetrated on planet Earth. Not all of them. Obviously, you guys have a GI Bill, so you could I think I have some knowledge from Jamil that says that you could learn for free. Maybe I don't understand GI Bills right, but he told me something one day that made me think the GI Bill lets you sometimes get a boot camp for free. Like, you don't have to pay it back. If that's the case, that's different. If that's the case, for sure, like, go to a boot camp. But like, honestly, the fastest way to learn this stuff is to get somebody to teach you all of the shit that I've been talking about for the past 50 minutes is how to hack the system, how to go faster, how to use your subconscious mind to learn 10 times faster than you're like. Every boot camp is going to teach you how to consciously understand something. And then they expect by God's green earth, like some miracle happens that your subconscious mind learns it too. It's backwards. They will be teaching this in 100 years the opposite way in schools. They will be teaching subconscious first, because then your conscious mind can grasp it 10 times faster, 10 times easier, maybe even 100 times, maybe even 1,000 times. The problem is when you go about doing subconscious first learning, it doesn't look like conscious first learning. Therefore, most people go, that's not learning. Incorrect. There's a whole backwards. I'm one of the only people that believes this, by the way. So I've got tons and tons of coaching students that have proved that this shit works, but I'm one of the only people that says this. So, this is not a common belief I'm propagating here, but subconscious first learning, it's the future. They will be teaching that in 100 years in schools. I absolutely promise you that. And every boot camp, I would very closely ask them, how do you teach? Am I assigned somebody that's done this before? How is he going to help me? Is he going to like sit there and teach me JavaScript lessons over Zoom? Is he going to that's a waste of time. You get on Zoom and do a JavaScript lesson. This is conscious education. I'm trying to consciously understand, okay, a loop is this, a variable is this. I don't understand it. Bro, just type it. Type it hundreds of fucking thousands of times, dude. The more times you type it, the more your subconscious mind will connect the nodes of what it means. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, your conscious mind goes, aha, I understand what that means. Oh my God, it's a miracle. I get it. You will not understand it the first 50 times, the first 30 times, the first 40 times. After a while, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever it is, everybody's different. For me, it was 2 weeks. For a lot of my students, it's 4 weeks. After a certain amount of time, your conscious mind clicks and you go, oh shit, I actually understand that very well now. It took me typing that about 60 times or 6 times. I mean, everybody has different IQ. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. Some people, it could be 10 times. Some people might be 60. That's okay. We're all the same here. You can be however you are. But no matter how you are, what your IQ is, the subconscious approach is 10 times faster. But try to ask anybody but me this advice. Everybody will think I'm crazy. Not true. Anyway, any other questions before we go? Best books to hack the subconscious mind. Yeah, I do have a book. It's called The Power of the Subconscious Mind. Let me get you the exact author. The Power of the Subconscious Mind. Honestly, okay, so I'm going to give you a book so that I actually have some resources for you guys. So, by Joseph Murphy, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. Murphy. You can find it. Joseph with a PH on that. Here's the problem, though. These books are great. There's a lot of books about the subconscious mind. The concept that I'm teaching you right here about how to have the subconscious mind do learning, the thing that I'm telling you about here, how to use the subconscious mind for learning. I've read more books than anybody I've ever met. I promise you, there is not a single book that has ever been written on this topic. Unfortunately, I wish to God there was a book on this topic. Now, I would still read this, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. Still really good to understand the way it works and everything. It's basically like, I like to think of it like there's an elephant underneath and this is a great concept in the happiness hypothesis book talks about this too. Like, you're the rider on the top of the elephant. The rider is the conscious mind. The elephant is the subconscious mind. And if you know anything about riders who ride elephants, they kind of like, they can't be like, you have to go this way, because the elephant is very big. The elephant is very powerful. So there's like some mechanism that the elephant rider uses to say, please go this way, please go this way. And it's more of like a suggestion. This is like the way you influence the subconscious mind, with like suggestions. You can't force it to do anything. So that's why you have to do the coding over and over and over again. Eventually, after doing enough times, you suggested it enough. You've connected all the nodes enough that the nodes propagate up to the conscious mind, and then enlightenment occurs. Enlightenment happens in the conscious mind through subconscious expression. People think it's the exact opposite. For some, I don't understand why. Anyway, that book is really useful though. Yeah, of course, Victor. Thanks, man. So any other questions? Jamil, I know you're here as well. If you have any other questions, feel free to pop them in. We've been going for about an hour and 8 minutes. Happy to stay on if you guys have more questions. And if not, like I have a spreadsheet as well. Maybe I don't want to keep you guys here too long, obviously. Just seeing if there's any valuable questions here or anything on my mind. I will give you guys the last tip, I guess. Is the last tip would just be, you have to focus. Okay, so this is like a big problem, is focus. I said this earlier, but you have to pick one language and one framework. If you've not yet got a job, and I know a lot of you guys have gotten a job, and I apologize if this isn't like relevant. If you haven't gotten a job yet as a developer, pick one language and one framework, and do not skip to another one until you're getting paid to learn. Like, look, every day that you're sitting at your computer learning to code, you should think in your head, what is the what is the like downside risk of this? Like, what is the downside of sitting here at my computer and learning to code? Well, the downside is that you're not sitting at a job that's paying you to learn to code. They would be paying you if we do some basic math, 80,000 per year. I mean, this isn't like super exact math, but let's just say it's $333 a day. That'll be about 121,000 per year. That's not exact math. Take taxes out, it's going to be like 80,000 with like 75,000 after taxes, etc. Especially in California, maybe even less. So like that's not exact math, but let's say it's $333 a day. Every day that you do not have a job, you should think the opportunity cost of sitting at my computer, learning to code and not learning to code at a job is me burning $333. There's $333 on this desk right here. Every day I choose to sit here in my comfort zone instead of getting out of my comfort zone and getting that job. I'm burning that 333. Burn it, burn it, burn it. Every day you're burning it. And you have the capability to go out and get a job. To do that, you need to focus on one language, one framework. Use tutorials to build a web application that you pick. Make an idea. If you don't have an idea, let me give you one. A book library application. How do you build an application, a web application? If you're a web developer, if you're an app developer, do this on the app, where I'm able to log in and rent a book. Oh my God, how do I do that? Okay, Google. Let's say you pick Python Django. How to build how to do authentication, login, register in Python Django. Perfect. Type it. See the tutorial, type it out. Exactly what it says. Could be a YouTube video, could be a tutorial, and then build all the components. This is what I do. I teach in my coaching, obviously. Build all the components of that application using components from other tutorials. Type it though. Don't copy. If you copy, your brain does not learn anything. Your subconscious does not learn anything. Type it. After you typed it, build a little website, just like mine, dainmiller.org, D-A-I-N Miller.org. You're going to want a little bit different, though. You're going to want home, about, contact, home, about, portfolio, contact. That's it. Homepage, just a big picture of you. Say what you do. I'm a front-end developer. Always talk in the present tense. You are a, not you want to be. No hiring manager. You think I'm going to hire you if on your fucking website it says, I would like to be a front-end developer? Dude, that's such baby shit. Like, what is this, 1965? You are a front-end developer. That's why I'm going to hire you. So speak in present tense, even if you've yet to achieve it yet. How hard is that to understand? Okay, I'm not being mean. I'm just like, I get kind of passionate about this. Then on your portfolio page, take that web app that you just built. Should take you about 20 days of focused, consistent effort. Could take you a little bit less if you get less errors. If you get an error every single day, it's going to take about 20 days. Take that web app, put it on that portfolio page, deploy it to Heroku for free. Do not use the $7 per month service. If you can't afford it, you can deploy it for completely free, or to AWS. They have ways to deploy to AWS for free as well. And then put a contact page with your email address and your phone number if you want. And then your about page. Have like a little story. People buy into story. The only thing that matters in the world is story. This is a business. Now we're getting into business. The only thing that matters in business is story. And honestly, in life, the only thing that matters is story. So if you want somebody to hire you, you need to tell a good story about yourself. I used to work at the circus, and then I decided to run away I ran away to join the circus, and then I hated it there. So I ran away from the circus, and don't lie. I'm not saying to lie, but whatever you've done in your past, make it into a story. If you worked at the circus, that's part of your story. If you worked at McDonald's, that's part of your story. Whatever it is, turn it into a story and put it in your freaking about page. Okay. Could be this long, not that big. Could be this long. Like, it's not a lot of text. Okay. This shouldn't take more than like 3 hours. A story has an intro, a hook, characters, drama, a climax, and then a resolution. All stories follow that. By the way, I don't know how to do stories. Watch a like mafia movie. Who's that producer or the director that does Martin Scorsese? Martin Scorsese, an expert in storytelling. Watch a mafia movie and have your notepad open. What is this part of the story? Is this the intro? What is he doing here? Is like, bro, reverse engineer success. I don't know how to do stories, and you have a Martin Scorsese movie that you could learn from. Reverse engineer the goddamn success from that. Okay. Fair. Pretty straightforward. Then have a little blog post. You could do it on the website or on Medium. Doesn't have to be on your website. Write a few blogs. This is how to get a job the fastest way imaginable. Write a few blogs. Okay. What should those blogs talk about? Number one, your passion. Why are you passionate about being a front-end developer? Why are you passionate about blah, blah, blah? Talk about passion. People want to hire people that have energy and passion. I'm not going to hire you if you're dull, lame, and lazy. I ain't hiring you. I'm going to hire you if you're passionate, energetic. You have I don't even care about how smart you are. I care about that you're passionate, humble, hungry, and energized. That's all I need. I don't need IQ. Throw that to the birds. So you're going to write a blog post about why you're passionate about this, come up with a reason, controlled folly. How could I think my way into being I'm really not passionate about front end. How could I think my way into being passionate about front end? Come up with something. Okay. Then have another blog post. Maybe this one you talk about maybe a little bit more detail about your story, maybe a little bit about your background, how you got into tech, why you became interested in this, what it's going to do for you in the future if you could figure out if like not what it's going to do from you, because that's not present tense. Remember the rule, always write in present tense. So why you love tech, because how it changes your life by being able to work remotely or something like that, right? So anyway, you want a few blog posts. The reason you want these blog posts is because a hiring manager does not know you. He does not know you. So he needs to be able to get a glimpse inside of your brain. I'm not going to hire you if I don't see your brain. How does your brain work? If you just tell me I'm passionate, I'm energized, why would I believe that? I need to see it. Do I see it exuding off you? Well, it's a remote interview. The interview's over Zoom. How the frick am I going to notice if you're passionate unless you're like speaking like I am right now? Most people don't speak like I am right now. Okay? Most people are like, hey, what's up? How's it going? Bro, you need a blog post that shows this. Even if you come off bad on Zoom, he knows because he read the blog post you are passionate. Okay? Talk about your military. All you guys have been in the military. Talk about that. That's freaking awesome. Make that part of your story. Oh, we went to Iraq and we did this. That should be part of everybody's story that went there. That's fucking badass. That's part of the story. Even if you're like, I don't really like to talk about that. Controlled folly. What would he like to hear about? Come up with something. Okay, it's part of your story. Now, that's it. Send 50 applications, and there's a whole method for how to send applications. And I will tell you, there's one other hack that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on in the call, but my coaching program goes super deep on this. So dainmiller.org, you can book time on my calendar if you're interested. But basically the last step is, and this is only for a few people that are like really serious to get a client. The fastest way to get a job as a developer is to go from freelancer to developer. Okay. So I teach people how to get their first client, get one or two clients. It could be for anything. It could be for a fucking WordPress website. Doesn't matter. Then in the interview, you go, I'm actually looking to specialize. Right now, I'm kind of like doing everything. I'm like doing accounting and billing, and it's kind of annoying because I love programming. I'm a craftsman at heart, but right now as a freelancer, I have to do the entire business. But the reason I applied for this job is because I would like to specialize, and this front end position would allow me to go from running this entire business to just specializing in this one area and being that craftsman of which I am. That is the best way to approach an interview. Just everybody I've coached with that framework and that frame, going into an interview with that frame, has got the job within the first or second or third or fourth interview. It's absolutely a dominating frame. Okay. So frames are like an advanced topic. We don't have time for psychology stuff. They don't even talk about it in books, but that's a frame that you really want to use. If you don't know what it is, just, I need to get a client. Get any client you can. WordPress client, doesn't matter. Hey, I need a website for my business. Build a Squarespace, give it to them. It's not that hard. Okay. Then you go into the interview and go, yeah, I've actually done a couple websites for clients. Do you need to tell them it was a Squarespace website? No. Because you're ethical, right? If they hire you and they say, I need you to learn this, are you going to learn it? Yeah. So you're going to do whatever the fuck it takes to get that job to support your family, right? You should. If you're not, you're scared of something. You're scared of yourself. You're scared of not abiding to what they want. You're scared of not fulfilling your duty. You're scared of not being, you're just scared of something. Okay. And all of y'all shouldn't be scared. Okay. So I guess that's where we'll end it. Please provide a plug for your mentorship. What does it cost? What type of commitment is required by a student? Yeah, so it's just on dainmiller.org. You could book a call. We'll talk about it. It's different for everybody. It's like there's no like one price for everybody. It's like customized because everybody's different. Some people are like, I'm working at NASA as a robotics engineer and I want to learn coding. Like I've had that. And that guy, he's got a full-time job. He's got a wife and 2 kids. He can only do coaching with me once a week, right? So the price for him is going to be very different than if you tell me I need to get a job 3 weeks from now and I will work with you every single day. That's totally different. Do you see that? So you can book a call. It's a totally free call on my website if you're interested. If not, totally cool. Also, my YouTube has a lot of resources, youtube.com/startherefm, and my podcast, Start Here Web Dev. Obviously, Fall In has a lot of great resources as well. youtube.com/startherefm. That's a great resource as well. Cool. Jamil, any other questions? Let's see. The lighting is getting crazy. Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for that. Yep. So Jamil said not on his end. Okay, cool. Cool, guys. Alrighty. Well, so hey, real quick before we go, Fall In Hackathon, November 18th to 20th. I want all of y'all to be there. I'll be there. Okay, former CIA agent Andrew Busmonte will be there. Okay, you're going to be helping homeless veterans with your projects. Do you care about helping people? Do you care about fixing this world? You need to be there. Okay. I don't know what to do. I don't even know how to do anything good. Be there. I don't care. Show up. Show up. Every fucking opportunity you need to show up for. Just like in the military, they said to be aggressive first. That's the way you're going to approach life now. Aggressive, doing everything you can, showing up to every single opportunity you can to get this job. This is the first one. Okay. All right. See you guys there.